Welcome to another episode of the Go Flush Yourself podcast with Jared Kirk and Matt Milbauer. Hey listeners, I want to thank our sponsor, Bird Hunter Supply, your go-to for premium hunting gear at birdhuntersupply.com. This family-owned business run by a husband and wife team from Idaho is driven by their love for bird hunting, dog training, and the great outdoors. For them, hunting is a treasured family tradition. Think crisp mornings in the field and the thrill of the chase and those irreplaceable moments with dogs, family, and friends. They've built Bird Hunter Supply to share that passion, curating high-quality gear to help you create your own lasting hunting memories with your crew. Whether you're a beginner or a seasoned hunter, Bird Hunter Supply has you covered with top-notch equipment from dog training tools to hunting apparel, backed by exceptional customer service to make your experience unforgettable. Best of all, they're deeply committed to preserving the wild spaces we love. When you shop at birdhuntersupply.com, you can choose at checkout to direct a percentage of your order to conservation powerhouses like Pheasants Forever, Rough Grouse Society, or Delta Waterfowl. Your purchase helps these groups protect vital habitats and sustain the wildlife that makes our sport possible, ensuring hunting traditions thrive for generations. Visit birdhuntersupply.com today, explore the carefully selected gear, and support a family-run business dedicated to both hunters and the outdoors. That's birdhuntersupply.com. Gear up, hunt with purpose, and help preserve the wild. Welcome back to another episode of the Go Flush Yourself podcast. This is Matt, and I'm here solo again. We've been a little slow this month on getting episodes out. Jared and I have both been very busy with family and work and, all the things. And that's just the way it goes. We've been trying to schedule an episode for a little bit, but we just can't get our schedules to line up even just to get on and chat about training and, off-season stuff. And I think he has some new gear to talk about. So regardless, I'm here solo tonight. And we're going to be talking about, as you probably saw when you clicked on this episode, the history of the pump shotgun in the Uplands in America. Got to qualify that a little bit, otherwise we could go on for a very long time. But we'll have some more interviews coming up here soon, along with some other episodes as well. Before we get going too far into this, I want to thank our producers. So we have 3 producers on the show: Cord Campbell, Laramie Petticord Matthews, and Paul Rady. Might be Paul Ratty. Paul, if I got your last name wrong, or I guess any of your names wrong, please let me know. I want to make sure I'm saying that right here. But I really want to thank you all. We have a couple of Patreon tiers. One is the $2 a month supporter level, which is really just saying thanks for producing the show. I want to kick in to help out with some of the expenses of having a podcast, and that's $2 a month. It does get you you get access to a private channel on our Discord. That's what I'm looking for. And then we have the producer level, which is $6 a month. You get a little shout out like you just heard our 3 producers get called out just now, and you get your name in the show notes, in the description of the podcast, actually, not even better in the show notes. And you can also have that name linked, if you'd like, to a social media account or a YouTube channel, whatever you have going on out on the internet that you'd like that linked to. And I know we played the ad earlier, but I just want to again support, or at least shout out to our sponsor, Bird Hunter Supply. If you're here in the off season looking for training supplies, new gear for next season, just want to browse around, check it out, check out their website. Their link is in our description. I really appreciate them as a sponsor, and I just want to give them kind of an extra shout out on this episode for their support. And lastly, before we get into the history of the pump shotgun, I want to invite anyone who is in southeastern Washington, northeastern Oregon, we'll say, but if you're further away and want to come, I'm not against that either. But we're having our first potentially annual Pheasants Forever Benton Franklin chapter Clays for Conservation shoot. We have an awesome venue. When you get there, it just feels like you're in pheasant country. Beautiful venue with a great spot for shooting clays. We're going to have a little friendly competition, serve you lunch, commemorative t-shirt, prizes, the whole thing, and even some kind of surprises in there as well. So if you are interested in coming to that, check out. I'll have a link in the podcast description to go sign up. We do have some spots left, but spots are limited. And we also have a sign up in there where it's not limited, where if you just want to come and hang out and get some lunch, and you can buy a t-shirt also if you really want one of the t-shirts as well. I think they're pretty cool. I also designed the logo on the back, so I'm pretty biased. But you can actually sign up for that too and just pay for lunch. It's much cheaper. You just pay for lunch and you get to hang out and talk to a bunch of other folks here in the off season. And we're not out hunting and getting to see other hunters as much. And you can come out and scratch that itch while you wait for hunting season to come here in about 6 more months or so. All right, let's get into the podcast. This is the history of the pump shotgun in the Uplands. You know the sound, that metallic shuck shuck echoing across a frozen CRP field just before dawn, or rattling through the thick alder bottoms where the grouse explode like feather grenades. For generations of American upland hunters, that was the sound of certainty, the sound of a gun that wouldn't quit when the birds were high and fast, when the mud was ankle deep and the cold had worked its way into every joint. It was the sound of a pump-action shotgun. And for the most of the last 70 years, if you asked anyone who that gun belonged to, they'd say one name without hesitation: the Remington 870. They'd say it with a kind of reverence. The 870 wasn't just a shotgun. It was the standard, the one that replaced the elegant but finicky Winchester Model 12, the one that soldiers carried into trenches, cops carried in cruisers, and dads carried through every pheasant field from South Dakota to the Palouse. Over 11 million built. At the time, the most produced shotgun in history. If you grew up hunting birds in the second half of the 20th century, odds are your first real bird gun, or your father's or maybe your grandfather's, was the 870. It felt like it would last forever. But here's the part that stings. If you're still clinging to one of those old wingmasters, forever ended. Quietly, inexorably, the throne got taken. Not by some exotic over-under from Europe. Not by a fancy inertia-driven semi-auto. By another pump. A cheaper one. A lighter one. One that started life as a deliberate understudy and ended up writing the obituary. You know what I'm talking about. The Mossberg 500. More than 12 million are sold now of the Mossberg 500. It's not a close race anymore. And if you want to understand how that happened, how the gun that defined American upland hunting for decades got quietly outmaneuvered in its own backyard, you have to go back. Because the story doesn't start in 1961 with the first 500 rolling off the line in New Haven. It starts in the mud of the late 19th century, when men were still figuring out how to make a shotgun do more than one thing before you had to crack it open and reload. The pump-action shotgun didn't arrive fully formed. It was born ugly and experimental. Back in the 1880s, Christopher Spencer, the same Spencer who'd given the Union repeating rifles during the Civil War, tinkered with a slide-action shotgun. Heavy, clunky, expensive. It didn't catch fire commercially. Then came John Browning's Winchester 1893, followed by the legendary 1897. That one stuck. External hammer, exposed guts, built like a farm implement. It could handle smokeless powder when others choked on it. Farmers, market hunters, even doughboys in the trenches loved it because it kept shooting when everything else jammed or ran dry. By the early 20th century, the pump was no longer a novelty. It was practical, working class practical. The kind of gun a man who couldn't afford a Purdy or even a decent L.C. Smith could buy, beat on, and still trust to drop a limit of prairie chickens or jacksnipe. Doubles may be prettier. Semis were coming. Browning's Auto 5 in 1900 changed everything for those who could stomach the recoil. But the pump stayed in the fight because it was simple. Dual action bars and layer designs meant no twisting, no binding. Rack it hard and it fed every time. Winchester's Model 12 took the crown in the 1910s and 1920s. Smooth as silk, internal hammer, no external hammer to snag. It became the duck gun, the upland gun, the everything gun for a generation, but it was built on the old way, machined, fitted, expensive to produce. After the war, Remington smelled blood. They had the Model 31, a solid pump, but it wasn't moving the needle, so they went back to the drawing board. What emerged in 1950 was the 870. A steel receiver, forged parts where it mattered, ball bearing smoothness in the action, at least on the early Wingmasters. Modular, could swap barrels, change gauges, turn it from a quail gun to a goose slayer in minutes. Priced right, reliable in mud, cold, neglect. It didn't just sell, it dominated. By the mid-1960s, it had passed the Model 12 in numbers. By the 80s, it was untouchable. 11 million and counting. If upland hunting had a heartbeat in post-war America, it beat in the rhythm of the 870 slide. But empires don't fall because they're weak. They fall because someone else figures out how to do the same job cheaper, lighter, and without apology. Enter Oscar Mossberg. Swedish immigrant, started in 1919 making 22 pistols in a rented space in Connecticut. Built a reputation on affordable rimfires. During World War II, they churned out training rifles. After the war, they watched Remington eat Winchester's lunch with the 870. Mossberg wasn't blind. They had Carl Benson design something that looked suspiciously familiar. The 500 launched in 1961. Aluminum receiver instead of steel, lighter, cheaper to cast, tang safety. You had lefties and righties could shoot it without a problem then. And it's on top, where the thumb naturally go. Remington's crossbolt on the trigger guard, at least to me, always felt kind of like an afterthought. Maybe that's because I'm also an over-under shooter, but we won't get into that. Had a single action bar at the time, but later a dual action bar. But it worked. Interchangeable barrels, cheap, reliable enough. Hunters bought them because they cost less than the 870 Express that came later. A lot less. At first, nobody thought it would dethrone anything. The 870 was the premium choice. Wingmasters had walnut and polish. The 500 had birch and a plastic and workmanlike finish. But Mossberg kept iterating. They added combos, 2 barrels in a box. They pushed the shooting system idea hard. And they priced aggressively. Always a few bucks under the comparable Remington. In the 70s and 80s, that mattered more than ever. Inflation hit, wages stagnated for a lot of blue-collar guys who were still made up the bulk of upland hunters. The 500 started showing up in more trucks. Then came the steel shot era. Lead bands on waterfowl. Both guns adapted. But Mossberg's lighter weight became an advantage in the uplands too. Carry a 500 all day through CRP or sagebrush, and the ounces add up. Quail hunters in the southwest, grouse hunters in the northeast, they noticed. The 870 felt heavier, more planted. Great for recoil management on heavy loads, but tiring when the shots were snap affairs on wild flushing birds. Quality debates rage, and still do. Some swear the 870 steel receiver is tougher long term, maybe they're right. Others point out that Mossberg's aluminum holds up fine unless you're running it, I don't know, in a war zone. And even then, the 590 variants passed military torture tests Remington never bothered to enter. But in the field, for upland, both guns eat dirt, snow, burrs, and they keep on running. The real separator wasn't durability, it was price, weight, and availability. By the 2000s, Remington started bleeding. Corporate takeovers, cost-cutting, you all know the story if you're fans of Remington at all. The Express model shed features. They had plastic triggers and rougher finishes. They were chasing the bottom. Mossberg stayed lean and mean. They undercut on price every time. Hunters who once bought Wingmasters now bought 500s because the difference in performance on pheasants or quail wasn't worth the extra cash, and the Remington's quality dipped noticeably in the late 2000s and 2010s. Sticky actions, fit issues, and the slide really started moving. Today, Mossberg claims over 12 million 500 series guns, and the 870 still sits a little over 11 million, with production slowed by bankruptcies and restarts and buyouts. The 500 is everywhere. It's the default pump gun in big box stores from Walmart to Cabela's to anywhere. It's the gun new hunters buy first. It's the gun that keeps going when budgets are tight and birds are scarce. Does that make it better? Not necessarily. A well-worn Wingmaster still feels like poetry compared to a base 500. The 870's action can be butter smooth when tuned, but better isn't always the point. In upland hunting, the point is showing up year after year in conditions that would break lesser tools. And right now, more American hunters are showing up with the Mossberg 500 slung over their shoulder than anything else. The pump shotgun didn't die with Remington. It just changed hands. So next time you're in the field and you hear that familiar shuck shuck, listen close. It might not be the sound you grew up with, but it's the sound that's carrying tradition forward. You know, this is interesting to me in researching some of this, and it's interesting how it kind of went from the Winchester Model 12 to the Remington 870 and now the Mossberg 500 in terms of pumps, at least. Because when I was a kid, and I grew up in the 90s, born in the 80s, my grandpa carried the Winchester Model 12, which I actually have now. And that goes in line with what was popular then. And my dad had, and I still adore the gun, the Remington 870 Wingmaster in its prime is when he got that gun. And I take my nephew hunting now, and he has a Mossberg pump, right? I think it's the Maverick 88, but it's still the same. And it's interesting to see, in my personal hunting story, it laid out like it did for kind of the general gun buying public and how things went here in the States for shotgun buying and use in the uplands, and I imagine in the duck blinds as well. I find that interesting. And maybe you have the same story for you. Maybe not, but I wouldn't be surprised if you come from a family where people have been hunting for a handful of generations, back to the middle of the 20th century at least, you probably see those same guns pop up, right? And even if that wasn't their primary gun, they probably had one at one time, depending on when they were born and when they were, active in the uplands. We have kind of a running joke on the podcast, and especially in the Discord, about me and pump shotguns. And it's part of the reason, a little tongue-in-cheek, on why I chose this topic for a history of episode. And the idea is that I always talk down about pump shotgun owners, but I'll be honest, I'll throw it out here. I love pumps, and I'm sure I'll be buying another one soon. The first 2 shotguns I bought with my own money were pumps, and there's just something about them. And for me, when it comes to nostalgia, like I said, I have that Winchester Model 12 from my grandpa, and that brings back memories from being a kid in the field with him. But my dad's Remington 870, like when I think of a shotgun, I think of his Wingmaster. Like, that's a shotgun. That's the pinnacle of how they should look, and how reliable they should be. And that blued action with the simple, oiled walnut. It's beautiful gun, beautiful shape. And when I picked up my recent Satori, I wanted the blued action. I didn't want some fancy engraving. I might be an over-under guy when I'm in the field, but that look still sticks with me. And that's what's, the pump shotgun is the shotgun it's really the backbone of the bird hunter, whether it's waterfowl or upland or small game or whatever. If you're using a shotgun, that pump is kind of, everyone has a story about a pump shotgun, at least one. I think everyone should have a pump shotgun that they get to take out. And usually it's like the bad weather gun, right? Because it's going to work. That's kind of the beautiful thing about pumps. Well, thanks everyone for listening to this episode. Like I said earlier on, Jared and I will be back later with some interviews and discussions between him and I on what's going on with our dogs and training in the off season, all that stuff. But for now, hope your off season's going well. Hopefully your dogs are doing well, and we'll talk to you all next time. Thanks for listening to the Go Flush Yourself podcast. You can continue the conversation on our Discord server. The link is in the podcast description. You can also follow along with Matt and Jared on Instagram and Facebook. If you want to support the podcast, you can subscribe to the Go Flush Yourself on Patreon for the easy monthly cost of only $2. You can also check out our shop and pick up a Go Flush Yourself sticker, shirt, or other merchandise. All links are in the podcast description.